Everyone, this is Anthony, and he is presenting my quest to become a samurai, gangster, cowboy scientist. Yeah.
Thank you. So I come from humble beginnings. I was born to a single mom, right over there, pretty lady with a hand up. And growing up, we didn't have much. And I'm from San Francisco, California. I was born in Sacramento, but moved to San Francisco when I'm 4, so pretty much a San Franciscan. And the environment that I grew up in was much different than kind of the path that I've taken since then. And I'll get to that later. But talk about me and growing up. Let's see. I live in the inner city of San Francisco. Sometimes lived in neighborhoods that were pretty hood, and was pretty heavily influenced by a lot of just urban culture. Some of that was hip hop, some of it was skating, and a whole bunch of other things. But at times, while my mom was working, I would spend some time living with my grandparents. And I always heard stories from them about how when they were young, they would run around in open fields and in the forest. And I had these fantasies about doing that just because I relished the freedom and adventure that they always talked about. But I didn't get to experience it, as most kids who grew up where I did and how I did never really do. And then I got this amazing opportunity in high school to attend a boarding school called Midland, which is in Southern California, located in the mountains. And it's not your average school, and definitely not your average boarding school. There are 26 kids. No, sorry, 80 kids. 26 kids is I'll get to that school later. 80 kids, and don't have hot running water. In the winter, it gets well below freezing, and if you want a hot shower, you got to chop wood, make a fire, heat the water. I had to get up every day early in the morning to go pick the lettuce, because when the sun comes up, chemical is released from the roots and the lettuce gets bitter. Just FYI, if you ever have bitter lettuce, because it's picked too late. I also had to herd the cattle after class and before practice. And so it was a very different experience than what I had been used to growing up. It was definitely nothing like the city. And this experience impacted me in a number of ways. For the first time, I felt that I was in an environment that really valued intellectuality and exploration, and just passion about things that really mattered, which is not something that I was really exposed to a ton before then. And this experience, combined with the family stories that I had growing up, really made me excited to dive right into it. I had always been really passionate about science from really as long as I can remember. I loved dinosaurs, as many kids do growing up, but I never really grew out of that dinosaur phase. And so I had dreams of being a paleontologist or archaeologist or astronaut or something, just exploration and discovery. And then I was in this environment where so many of my peers were really excited about the same or similar things, which was really great because it pushed me to be more passionate about it, and pushed me to work harder. But one of the things that I became most passionate at my time at that boarding school, Midland, was environmental conservation. I grew up with a value set that I really tie from my family history. On my mom's father's side, we're Japanese American. They were migrant farm workers, but were displaced after coming back from the internment camps of World War II. So it also ties into my desire to farm. But the value set that I think I take from there is something called Bushido, samurai ancestry, and Bushido is the honor code of samurai. And the values within it are dedicating yourself in service to, in feudal Japan, it would be to your warlord or the emperor or whatever. But I really identified with how much or how important honor was, and that's something that I've always valued because of that, I think. And then I also had this sort of value code that comes from some of the culture that I grew up with and was surrounded with in early 90s and early 2000s hip hop culture, the G code, which values something, in some ways it connects. There's a lot of respect that's valued, but also I think that the primary thing is success, and specifically monetary success. And so there's some confliction early on between my two things that I felt were a big part of my identity. So back to Midland. I was in a totally different environment. As I had said, I was becoming really passionate about things, and I thought that I'd found the thing that I wanted to fight for, that thing that the samurai would dedicate himself to, and that is protecting the environment, because I feel like if anybody is being attacked and can't protect themselves, it's the environment. Every day we lose at least 25 species, and those are only the ones that we know of. Who knows how many species have gone extinct without us discovering them. And that was really, really sad to me. And so I found my cause. But after I left Midlands, I only stayed there for the first 2 years of high school, and then I returned to San Francisco to finish up high school. I was surrounded by the culture that I grew up with, but my experience for the past 2 years had been so vastly different. Whereas most of my peers at my new high school had been going to house parties on the weekend, which I honestly thought going back into San Francisco were like a movie high school thing. I didn't know house parties were real. So that was a big change. And then they'd talk about new music, new hip hop, I don't know, like new TV shows, and none of which were present at my boarding school. And so it was a pretty strange adjustment at first. But once I had gotten more into it, there was all these other distractions. There were drugs, there was much more violence, there were things that aren't really healthy and aren't where my core samurai Bushido values lie, but were definitely a part of me growing up. I was surrounded by it, and I have members of family and friends who have been involved with these things, and so it's definitely a temptation of sorts, and a temptation that was hard to resist. So there were times where I was engaging in things or involved with things that were not really what I believed in my core, but at the same time they were fun and they were easy, and I saw this life and possible path that I thought would be fun and I could be successful, make a lot of money, and even though it wasn't what I really believed in, it would, be satisfying in its own way, or so I thought. And now I get to TBB. Throughout TBB, as I'm sure you all hear, unless you're alums, you already know what I'm talking about, or parents, you have already begun to hear and will continue to hear all about all the incredible things we've seen and learned and experienced throughout these past 7 or so months. And it's all been impactful. There wasn't really a single moment that I didn't feel like I was learning something or had something new to bring back home to my friends, or just to keep within myself is the way that I've grown personally. And those have really helped. So last year I was in my first year of college. I attended the University of Puget Sound and went into college and went through my first year really feeling like pretty distraught. There were still these temptations to engage in things that I didn't really believe in. There were things that were superficial, things that just didn't really matter that much. But at the same time, I had these goals and life dreams that were very lofty, but just were difficult to attain. And so I chose to do TBB to find my purpose, to find direction, to find my path going forward. And I haven't found that yet. I'm still working on it, that's for sure. But I've definitely learned a lot that has helped me farther down that path, or a little bit farther in finding that path. Again, I've learned so much. We've all learned so much. And some of those things were things that I've thought about before and struggled with, and some of those things are things that I've not even thought about and just been exposed to for the first time in TBB. But some big examples were going into my first year of college, really just going back to San Francisco after my boarding school. I felt pretty pessimistic about environmental conservation. It's been difficult for me at times to connect with like greater humanity. I'm a big fan of individuals. There's some really amazing people that I've met, but I've always felt that like just like fucking it up, you know? we're every day, again, as I said earlier, we're killing off 25 new species at the least, and there's not really much visible change. And so, yeah, I was kind of in a nihilistic, pessimistic place about the possibility of change. But one of the things that I saw throughout TBB was the capacity for people to change and the desire to change and do better, which is something that I don't really get to see all that often, or at least not in ways that I think matter beforehand. In Thailand, we stayed for the first homestay, for the primary homestay, in Donjiang, which is a small farming village in Thailand. And somewhat recently, so the Green Revolution, if you aren't familiar with it, is basically a time when a whole bunch of new chemicals are being created, pesticides, GMOs, all this stuff that was believed to really just allow a whole bunch more people to eat, and much cheaper, much easier. There wouldn't be as much risk of like crop die-off. But there's been a lot of studies and a lot of evidence that of many bad effects. GMOs are much more likely to be wiped out. You're much more likely to have total crop loss if you're developed a modified grain than can be wiped out by a whole single epidemic, and then you lose everything. Whereas before, many people had been using many different kinds of grain, and they're very specified to the area and the region that are super well adapted naturally. There are other issues where pesticides are leaching into the groundwater and then carried downstream in rivers and polluting the oceans. Whole bunch of bad stuff that I don't want to get into because I could talk for hours, days about it. But so this village in Donjiang recently made a big change, whereas most people in Thailand and really much of the world operate on this system of using pesticides, relying on pesticides, GMOs, which then them in debts because it costs so much money, and you can't really get off of those pesticides and transfer to an organic system very easily. But this one community was able to do it, largely thanks to a single member of the community, POL. He's an amazing guy, and he ended up making an incredible change, converting most of the community. Was it most? Maybe it's still important. Anyways. He inspired many other families in the community to follow him in converting to organic, which has done amazing things for them. In an interview that I did with him, he said that what caused him to do it was he was noticing things that he didn't like, that weren't there before when he was growing up, when his parents were doing the old organic natural way. Things like frogs dying off. He would find frogs along the roads and in the rice paddies that were just dead for no apparent reason and left, and nothing would eat it because it was dying because they were spraying chemicals. And there are other problems within the community of people, again, being in debt to these large companies, and really there's just no cycle to get out of it. It's really difficult. But since he's made this change, it's brought the community together in a way that he had said was not really quite as close as it was before. Everybody helps out on everybody else's farms. They go to sell their products to a local market in Chiang Mai, which is the nearby big city, and they feel like they're healthier because they're eating healthy food, and they're also making the land healthy, which is something that's very important to them. And so I saw this ability to change, which I've not, and many other changes. But so now the TBB is coming to an end. I've already had 1 year of college, and I don't know where I'm going to college next year. And so I'm thinking about my future. And that's been pretty stressful. It's something I was stressed about going into TBB, and stressed about throughout TBB, and I'm still stressed about now. But some of the things that I've identified as what I most need to focus on going forward are staying true to my values and having faith that if at the end of my life I've dedicated myself to research or exploration, never really made a massive discovery, or dedicated myself to protecting and preserving the environment, but really never feeling like I made an impact, that I'd be satisfied just knowing that I gave it a try and that I pursued what I believed in, rather than engaging in those things that are superficial but are still part of my identity and still temptations, like going and getting a job that I don't really believe in, like working for an oil company or something and making a ton of money. So I know I have to have faith in my values. I also have to have faith in myself, in my abilities. Something that I've kind of struggled with in the past, excuse me. But some of my friends throughout TBB have been really supportive and believing in myself, getting me to believe in myself, getting me to push myself further. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. But thank you for listening, and thank you for coming.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
It seems you had a very clear path with environmental science center for
Yeah.
What goes on comes in TBB where you're asking yourself, we're experiencing all these amazing things, we're going to do a million things at once. Will you ever think, should I change my path or do something else?
Absolutely. So my biggest struggle in high school and in college was growing up, I had really never been too concerned about making money. But I did see as I got older that money does allow you to do a lot of things. And so one of the things I was wondering is if I were to be able to make a lot of money, which I think would be much easier than the path that I really want to pursue, would I be able to make an impact? Because money does go a long ways in a lot of ways, but maybe not in the most direct way. I wouldn't be maybe committing myself to research or working for an NGO that protects the environment, but if I made a lot of money, I could donate to people who are doing the same thing. And so one of the things I think that TBB has helped me see in choosing whether I should go for money or just fighting for whatever I believe in, no matter if there's money in it or not, is that one, I'll be able to travel and do and see amazing things regardless of what I do. And that I think the most direct way I can make an impact is not by just making a ton of money and donating it, it's by going and doing something that I truly believe in. One of the things that's especially changed my mind about the money aspect is that we met with a ton of different organizations in our time in DC before we were in Virginia. We studied a lot of them throughout the year, and there are so many people who are just donating money, and that doesn't necessarily produce a positive impact, or not impact in the best or right direction. So yeah, I've kind of decided that I'm gonna stick with the environmental stuff, but haven't decided where I'm gonna place myself within that exactly. Thank you.
Where is your cowboy identity?
Cowboy. Okay, so I didn't really connect most of my identities that were in my title indirectly, but while going through this project, I was thinking about initially just how I changed on TBB and what I was struggling with and why I chose to do it. Why I chose to do it again was because I wanted to find purpose, I wanted to find direction. How I changed is that I gained more faith in myself, and I gained more faith in humanity and their ability to change. And those other identities come into play. So I identified the samurai one as my Japanese heritage, and also arts from the age of 4. It's a big part, it's very connected. The gangster one is the G code that I grew up surrounded with hip hop culture and just general urban culture. And then my cowboy identity was what I found at Midland and found from family history. Again, on my mom's side, we were Japanese migrant farm workers, and then on my mom's mother's side, which is white, they were Dust Bowl farmers who were also displaced. And so something that's part of my family history and stories that I grew up with but was never really able to experience. So that's where the cowboy stuff comes.
All right, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you.